They're not mad.
It'll be okay. If you could anamorph into any tiny mammal, what would it be?
Oh, that's such a hard question. I would say probably a desman.
What is that?
So it's a small semi-aquatic guy that's like a mole, but it has a really long snout that it can use like a snorkel. And it's pretty round. I have a picture of one in the presentation that I'll point out to you. It's like a super round, furry, semi-aquatic thing. It's got big webbed back feet, but then it has little hands in the front. And its nose, the snoot is like, it can be a snorkel, so the nostrils are on top of it. And it also has a really good sense of touch, so it can like use its nose to touch stuff. It's great.
That's very great. Like a little elephant mermaid, just like nose exploring.
Yeah, it's pretty exceptional. I remember showing it to my undergrad, and she said, "How did I not know about this? This is my new favorite animal." I was like, "That's the right attitude."
Mm-hmm. It is really important. There's so many good animals that we just don't know about until we meet them.
Mm-hmm. And like, I had not learned very much about mammals until I took like an evolution of mammals class in college. And then I learned about so many different new ones, and I was like, this is what I want to do.
I am here for the mammals.
Always.
Awesome. It looks like we have some people watching. So hello, everybody. Welcome to our scientist chat today. My name is Anna Villani. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I'm going to be facilitating our talk today. And we are live, so any comments, any questions that you share in the chat, we're going to be able to relay to Stephanie and get some really fun answers to hopefully some very exciting questions about some thrilling, tiny, chilling creatures. It'll be so good. And so I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Smith, who is a Women in Science postdoctoral fellow. Is that correct?
That's correct. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Smith, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am so thrilled to be here to tell you about one of my favorite groups of animals, although my friends will tell you that every group of animals is my favorite group of animals. But I'm going to tell you today a little bit about some small mammals, and let's just get right into it. I need to set up my presentation here.
Mammal vision is pending.
Mammal vision. Okay, so what I'm going to tell you about today is why I think small mammals are really great and why I think you should think that too. So like Anna said, I work at the Field Museum and I'm a postdoc. So I finished my PhD, but I'm not a professor or anything yet. So I'm still looking for a final place to do my research, but I'm getting some really cool stuff done at the Field Museum right now. So what are we going to learn about today? Well, first we're going to learn what a mammal is, because not everybody has a good idea about that. And then what we're going to learn about what makes a small mammal really special. And it's not just because they're really cute and small, although that is definitely a big bonus. We're going to learn why small mammals are really important. And then we're going to take a little tour through some small mammals that you might know or be familiar with. And we're going to talk a little bit about some small mammals that you might not know, because I bet that there's a bunch of small mammals that we're going to talk about today that you didn't even know existed. And that's one of my favorite things to talk about. Okay.
Mammals, so exciting.
Okay. So first, let's talk about what a mammal is. So Anna, you're a mammal. I'm a mammal.
Okay, good.
Everybody watching is a mammal, presumably. Mammals have a few very specific characteristics that distinguish them from other kinds of animals like lizards and frogs. So mammals produce milk and their young drink milk. So this is some very cute sea lions having some milk. Mammals have fur or hair, and all kinds of mammals have fur or hair. So You might know that a whale is a mammal, and you might think, does a whale have hair? Yes, it does. It just doesn't have very much. And then one of the other important things about mammals is that they're really good at regulating their body temperature. So you might be saying, well, I have to wear a coat when I go outside because it's cold, but you're much better at regulating your body temperature and staying warm when it's cold outside than something like a snake. If a snake went outside, it would not be able to function. It would have to take a rest and go into torpor, which is like kind of a state where they're not very active. But mammals are really good at keeping their body temperature pretty regular. So that's why I put a picture of this beautiful hair in the snow, because they can stay warm even when it's cold outside. And they can stay cool even when it's really hot outside. So that's good.
Hair for all occasions.
Hair for all occasions.
There's some general questions that might be a good thing here. So from Oak Park and River Forest Day Nursery, the students want to know why animals have bones in their bodies and how
oh my gosh.
Place and how the bones move.
What a great question. Okay, so most animals are made of mostly just water. And you might think that's silly, and you might think they're clearly not water. You've got all sorts of stuff going on, but everything has water in it. And so if you were just a bag of water, if you were skin with water inside it, you would have to kind of like ooze along the floor, right? But if you have bones, then the bones can support all the rest of your organs. So they can support your heart and your lungs. They can support your digestive system. They support the rest, the main part of your skeleton. So like your spinal column that goes all down your back and holds up your head. It also holds up your arms and attaches to your legs. So bones inside of an animal help it to have some structure and move around. And the way that bones can move around is because they're attached to muscles. So if you stick your arm out and you go like this, you can feel that there's a big lump that forms right here. If you're super strong, that's a muscle. And this muscle gets longer or shorter depending on what your brain tells it to do. So if I stick my arm out like this muscle on the bottom gets shorter and pulls this part of my arm down. And if I tell this muscle to get shorter, it pulls my arm up. So there's muscles like that all over your body, and they attach to the bones and move them around.
It's a pretty good time.
I
have a skeleton. If we didn't, that would just be a very different situation.
It certainly would. I love having a skeleton. There are animals that don't have skeletons, but a lot of times they're supported by water. So and in the ocean.
That makes sense, like an octopus. There was also a question of how do mammals get hair on their bodies?
Well, that's an interesting question. So when a mammal is growing, when it's a baby, before it's born, there's a whole set of instructions in all of its cells that tell the cells what to become and how to grow. And so with mammals, one of the things that those cells are telling the animal's body to do is to produce hair. And so there's special cells inside your skin that give rise to these other parts that grow into hair. And there's different kinds of hair, and hair grows in different parts of the body. And so basically, when you're young, your body starts to get all these signals from your cells, and it starts to make different kinds of things like whiskers. People don't have whiskers, but you can see in this little picture of a lynx, you can see their little whiskers forming, right? And a lot of different mammals have different kinds of whiskers. They have fur like this. These guys have a really different kind of fur that sheds water really well because they like to live in the water. And so basically, when you're a mammal, it comes with being a mammal that you get fur. It grows when you grow.
Great situation.
Mm-hmm. I like my fur. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, works out.
Okay, so now we've got some a handle on what a mammal is. Um, let's talk about what makes a small mammal extra special. So I love small mammals because it's fun to imagine being a small mammal. So if you look at this guy right here, this is one of my favorite small mammals of all time. It's a shrew, which is a kind of small mammal that might look like a mouse, but it's not. It's a little bit different. But you can see that this is a person's hand holding this shrew. So it's about this long. And if you just think about what it would be like to live in the world being that small, everything else is so big. So the way that you live, the way that you eat, the way that you move around are all so different when you're so little. And that's like, what would that be like? These animals are experiencing that every single day. So they live in everywhere. So this is one of my favorites. This is an animal that likes to live in the water. And Anna and I were talking about this briefly before we started. This is called a desman, and it's got this long snoot that behaves like a snorkel. So when it goes swimming, it can stick it up out of the water, and it's got back feet for swimming and this fur that keeps it warm in the water. We've got naked mole rats, which are another excellent example of a small mammal, and they live underground. And if you look, every time you see a picture of a naked mole rat, you'll be able to see their teeth. And you might think, why do they all have teeth like that? Well, it's because they use their teeth for digging, and so that they don't get dirt in their mouths, their lips close behind their teeth. So even if they have their mouths closed, their teeth are still sticking out and they can still dig. And this is just one of my favorites. This is a numbat. It has a long tongue and it uses it for eating ants and termites. This is, you might know, is a hedgehog, and they have spines all over their bodies. And this is a South American mammal called the Monito del Monte, which I think is a really great name, but I just love him because he's so small and cute. They're so beautiful and they're so diverse and they do everything. So, you know, I think small mammals are pretty special just because they have so much difference among what they can do and how they do it.
That is really amazing. And kind of with all those differences, something to consider throughout our journey. There is a question from Emerson Elementary. What are the weirdest mammals? So I feel like we met a couple of weird friends right here and meet some other weird ones in the future.
Yes, this is definitely the desman is one of the weirdest mammals, I think, but I also think it's one of the coolest. So we'll get back to that in just a sec here. So small mammals are special, but they're also really important. So small mammals do some really important things in the ecosystems that they live in. So I'm not going to talk too much about bats today because I'm focusing on mammals that live on the ground. Those are the ones that I study the most. But bats are really good at controlling animals that are pests. So this one is eating a centipede, which centipedes are cool, but they're also really scary. So I'm glad that bats are helping take care of them. Bats also like to eat mosquitoes and other kinds of pest insects. So they're important for keeping the balance of the place where they live in terms of how many of what kind of animal there is. One of the other things that small mammals do is they transfer pollen among flowers. So this is a little guy. I just love this little guy. This is a kind of a mammal called an elephant shrew. It lives in Africa and it runs really, really, really fast. And it, of course, as many small mammals do, it has a very long nose that it can move around like this. And it goes and it sips the sweet nectar out of these flowers, and then it gets pollen stuck on it, and then it goes to other flowers and the pollen gets transferred so the flowers can reproduce. And then another extremely important thing that small mammals provide is a food source for larger animals. So you might think that being somebody else's dinner is not a very great achievement, but it's so important because every part of a living ecosystem has to work with all the other parts. And being a food source is so critical to support the whole structure and everybody working together. So small mammals are really important just in the natural environment generally. So I also think that they're really important because they're so diverse, and they can teach us a little bit about how different animals live in different places, like underground or in the water or in the trees or whatever they're doing, especially when they're so tiny. And they, it's like if you shrunk your body down to a tiny size, everything still works somehow. That's amazing. Okay, so now that we have a little understanding of why these animals are so great, we're going to go through some small mammals that you might know. So the first group of small mammals that I bet some of you know and some of you have seen before are the rats and mice. And you might look at this and say, what are those? Those don't look like rats and mice. These are all different kinds of fancy rats and mice. And I cannot get enough of rats and mice. They're so cool. Okay, so
I love those stripy ones, like especially. They're so good.
I love them. They look like a watermelon. There are mice that have beautiful stripes. There are mice. This is a rat that has a job. These rats work in Africa looking for unexploded mines, and they get banana snacks and they just love it. This is a crested rat, and these rats will eat poisonous plants. They'll chew them up, and then they spit them all over their long hairs on the back to keep them safe from predators.
Amazing.
Isn't that great?
Toxic shampoo.
Toxic shampoo. There's rats that have little spines all over them. This mouse is a carnivorous mouse, so it eats other animals, and most mice eat plants or grains, but this mouse is a ferocious hunter. And then this is a special kind of rat that likes to dig in the ground and eat worms, and it has a beautiful stripe. So, you might see rats in the subway, or you might see rats on the street. You might see mice in your yard or in your house sometimes, but those are not the only kinds of rats and mice that there are. There's so many kinds of rats and mice, and they are amazing and beautiful and just really interesting.
Yeah, because rodents are the most diverse group of mammals, right?
That's correct. There's I think it's a couple thousand species of rodents. And so rats and mice are one of the largest groups included within the group rodents. And things that are called rats and things that are called mice, they aren't all in one closely related group. They're spread out all across rodents. So we've got such an amazing diversity of rats and mice, but I picked two of my favorites that I'm going to tell you about now. So this is one of my favorites of all time. It is called a bushy-tailed wood rat, and these live in North America. There's a lot of different kinds. You can see that it has this bushy tail and it has this very cute face and little hands. But the coolest thing, I think, about these animals is that they make these big houses. So this is a bushy-tailed wood rat den. And this is a regular-sized human for scale. They make them so tall. And this rat is, with the whole tail and everything, is probably about a foot long. Its body is maybe this long. And they make these giant nests.
And is that just for one rat? How many live in there?
I think it's just for one rat. I think they probably raise families in there, but I don't remember specifically if it's a whole group. But these guys like to have a lot of room in their house because they collect things. So all of these things on the far right are things that have been found inside a bushy-tailed wood rat nest. The best one, I think, is dentures. I read about them finding dentures inside a wood rat nest, which is so good. And they like things that are shiny. And so obviously they find like silverware and bottle caps and stuff. But one of the other funny things about wood rats is that if they're carrying something that they found that they like, back to their nest to put it in there, and they find something else that they like better, they'll be like, forget this thing, and they'll pick up the other thing and just leave whatever they were carrying. So they know how to prioritize.
That's a really important skill, you know. Got to get the dentures more important than...
You gotta get those dentures. You could make a throne out of dentures if you were a wood rat. So these guys are great. I just love them.
Masters of interior design, clearly.
Exactly. That's who you want to design your woodland house. Okay, so that's my featured rat. Now my featured mouse. This is the singing mouse. Okay, and you can see this and you might be like, oh, that's just a picture of a mouse with its mouth open. But wait until you hear the singing mouse do its performance. So if you're really, it's very quiet and it's pretty high pitched, but you can definitely hear it. So here we go.
That almost sounds like a bat echolocating. It's so high and squeaky.
It does. It really sounds to me like a bat, to be honest. But these guys are not using echolocation the way that bats do. They use this call to defend their territory and to attract mates. So they're singing to their beautiful mate that they want to come and meet with them. And you can find all sorts of pictures of singing mice just serenading on the internet, and they are wonderful. And they're such a nice, rich color too.
That's very nice. So
yeah.
Like a translation of their song could be like, hello, I live here. Do not come to my house unless you want to be my friend. Like this is...
Yeah, correct. They're amazing. And there's also a couple different kinds of singing mice. And so this is one of the smaller species of singing mice. And so if they hear the song of the larger species, then they're like, oh, gotta go. And they like quiet down and run away. So they know when to make a quick escape. So that's my cool mouse feature. So now that we've talked a little bit about rats and mice, which you might know, but maybe you didn't know that they were as diverse as we talked about, let's talk about some types of small mammals that you might not know. And first we're going to talk about one of the best groups, which is shrews. So shrews are these tiny little guys. They include the smallest mammal in the world, which is this one in the middle at the top. This is a person's hand. So you can see how very, very tiny this fine friend is. And shrews are related to hedgehogs, and they're related to another group that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But they live in all different kinds of places, and they're super, super tiny. So they have these long pointy noses, and they have pretty small eyes and ears. And some of them are adapted to live in the desert. This is one of my favorites. It's got one spot on its back, and it's really taken down this giant grasshopper. And one of the things to know about shrews is because they're so little, they have to use a lot of energy to stay warm because they're mammals, so they want to stay a constant temperature. So they're small and they're always hungry. They're always wanting to eat. So you can always find pictures of shrews eating things that are much bigger than they are, big long worms or a big frog or anything like that. They live in the desert, they live in the forest, they live just all around the United States. There's many different kinds of shrews around here. And sometimes they have shrew battles. This is a picture of a shrew battle occurring between two shrews, where they squeak and move their little hands and rear up, which is pretty great. So I'm going to tell you about one of my very favorite shrews, which is a shrew that lives in a special place. It is the water shrew. So these guys are really small. So I don't know about you, Anna, but I know that when I get in the water, no matter what temperature the water is, I get cold right away.
Yeah, same.
So if you're really, really cold and you're really, really small, you got to figure out a solution for that. So water shrews have this fur that holds a lot of air. And so it's like wearing a puffy coat when you jump in the pool, which is great because then you stay nice and warm. And that's why this one looks so round.
It's alarmingly round. It's
alarmingly
like
spherical.
Round. It's so good.
So good. They also have other special adaptations that let them move around in the water. So this kind of shrew is a water shrew, and you can see that it has this really fluffy fur that allows it to stay warm in the water. But it also has these fancy hairs on its feet that make the feet more like flippers. And the tail has fancy hairs on it too that make it flat so that it can move like this and help the animal swim. It's pretty good. But maybe the best part of a water shrew is that they can smell underwater. And the way that they do, it's absolutely insane. Okay, so I'm going to show you a video of how they do it. And the way that they do it is they blow bubbles out of their nose and then they slurp them back in once the smell particles have gotten into the bubble. Okay, so we are going to go to right before. Okay, so here is the head of the shrew. This is a pretend grasshopper that they gave it to do a sniff. And you're going to see it shoot some bubbles out of its nose and then suck them back in. So here we go. Snooting around. Look at it.
Gosh, bubble slurping.
It's so good. Let's see, there's another good shot of it here. It's really investigating that grasshopper, doing some snooting around, trying to get a good smell in. So these guys are really well suited to living and trying to find food underwater. So pretty good.
That's pretty awesome. I can't smell underwater and I'd like to try that, but I'm a little afraid.
Yeah, I feel like it would end with a lot of water up my nose. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so I said we were going to talk also about another kind of animal that's related to shrews, and that is moles. And you might know about moles if you saw them in your yard, but these are animals that are specially adapted for living underground. And so if we look at these guys, they have these big paddle hands, and they use those for digging. And they have special long noses sometimes, like this one, which I'm going to hit on in a sec. And there's so many different kinds of moles that it's really exciting to notice that they're not closely related to each other at all. So these three kinds of moles all live in North America, and they're one group. These three kinds of moles all live in Africa, and they're more closely related to elephants than they are to these moles. What? And then this mole is most closely related to a kangaroo, more closely related to a kangaroo than it is to these other moles. There's so many kinds of moles. Who knew? Everyone should know.
That's wild. Is that a marsupial mole?
It is.
Wow.
So it's called Notorictes, and it swims through the sand. So instead of making a tunnel that stays up behind it, it just goes through the sand and the tunnel collapses as it goes. Wow. They're amazing. Moles, man. Okay, so one of my fave moles, and probably one of everybody's fave moles, to be honest, is the star-nosed mole. And these are so cool because the star on its face always has 22 tentacles.
A lot of tentacles.
A lot of tentacles. And those tentacles are used for touching stuff. So they can, they can grab stuff with their tentacles. Their tentacles are covered in these really sensitive, special organs that allow it to get lots of information when they touch something. And so they can figure out if it's something that maybe they want to eat, because moles do like to eat. And also they can smell underwater like the water shrews can. So what more could you possibly want?
That's like really incredible.
Mm-hmm. And just look at how cute he is. Look at his big old hands and feet. It's a good looking animal with this
Very
crazy
spiky
thing.
looking animal.
Pretty spiky. Yeah. And they also have kind of a longer tail than most moles do, which is pretty neat. I just love these guys. Okay, so that's my last small mammal feature, but I want to tell everybody that there's so much more to learn about small mammals. And you can learn so much about small mammals. You can find books about them at the library. You can visit the museum, like the Field Museum. We have some really cool stuff about small mammals in there. And there's a lot of good resources online for learning about these animals. So I get a lot of my pictures from this place called Animal Diversity Web. And you can look at pictures, you can look at information about them, you can find out where they live and what they eat, and you can find pictures of their skeletons, which is really great. And then, of course, you can always try and spot some tiny little friends right outside your house. No matter where you live, there's going to be small mammals there because they're everywhere.
They're all around us. This was such a delight. We have just a couple questions really fast because I know we're running out of time. There was a question from Emerson Elementary. When they're doing the smell bubbles, do the bubbles go back in the nose or in their mouth?
They go back in their nose, out and then right back in. It's crazy.
But like weird bubble retrieval. And then another question, the last question, are most small mammals good swimmers?
You know, I don't think that most are good swimmers. You'd probably have to be a decent swimmer, just because sometimes when it rains, there's a lot of water compared to how big you are. And they don't weigh that much, so they probably don't sink as much as people do when they jump in the water. But there's definitely certain small mammals that are really good at swimming and other ones that are probably not so good.
That's fair. There's so many different mammals. Everybody's got different skills.
It's true.
Well, thank you so much for taking us on this thrilling journey through small mammals. If anybody has any questions, feel free to share those with us and we can use our email technology and get stuff answered after the fact. But thank you so much. This was a delight.
I had such a wonderful time, and thanks everybody for listening to me talk about small mammals, because I love them so much, and I hope you do now too.
Bye, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.